Okay, welcome to our last and final round with presenters. And with us today, we have Shannon Naber and Sandra Hensel, both from Jefferson County Public Schools. And Sandra is currently the MTSS Behavior Supervisor, and Shannon is currently in the role of the MTSS District Behavior Support, and she works closely with the CSI schools. So at this time, I would turn it over to Shannon, and if I will monitor the chat for you as well.
Okay, thank you, Amy. So today we're going to share with you Tier 1 PBIS strategies that all classroom teachers should be using. And we're going to we'll go through these through the lens. We know that you already know, Tier 1 strategies, but we're really going to focus on looking at a protocol that I'll share with you in a minute. But I support JCPS, MTSS behavior. And like she had already said, I work mostly with AIS elementary schools. And my supervisor is on here, Sandra Hensel. And she will be part of the presentation as well. We support JCPS in restorative practices, PBIS, and we do a lot of teacher coaching. So this is like I had said, these are the best practices in a classroom for Tier 1 for PBIS. So we're going to go through each one, really dive into what it means to maximize structure in the classroom, set those expectations and rules, student engagement, how to acknowledge our students, and how to respond to inappropriate behavior. So this is the observation tool that I was telling you about. When we are going into classrooms and we're supporting teachers, we are looking at these components, and we give this to the teacher ahead of time if we can, and just have them self-evaluate where they think they are in these areas. And then that helps us when we're actually going into coach. So we're looking at, the expectations. Do they have expectations set? Are they tied to their school-wide expectations? What does their physical environment look like? Is it inviting? Active supervision, how are they with, moving, scanning, interacting with their students during the lesson? How do they encourage those appropriate behaviors that we're looking for? And then the last one, a continuum of responses to inappropriate behavior. So we're encouraging appropriate behaviors, and then how do we respond to inappropriate behaviors, and using those opportunities to respond during a lesson and engaging our students. So that's the tool that we use when we are supporting teachers in the classroom. And this has really helped, guide and everyone stay focused on what we're looking for. So the first one, maximize structure, that is looking at the physical environment of the classroom, predicting routines, what are the routines and procedures throughout the day? Are they safe and orderly? And are they being used consistently? And are they communicated to the students? So we know the more that we can keep them consistent, the better. And we encourage our teachers to use behavior-specific praise. So, telling the students what they are doing appropriately, the behavior, and doing it through prompting and acknowledging and correcting when they are not meeting the expectation. So maximizing the structure, looking at the physical environment, we want to have that interaction. We want to have that scanning, constantly being able to move around the room without any disruption. So when we go and we're looking at helping teachers set up their physical environment. So do they want their, room in clusters, rows? What is most conducive for them? And we also want to make sure that, the students have easy access to materials, especially our younger ones. If they're, reaching up on shelves, we want to make sure that they can get everything they need in a safe, orderly way. And then, if they have reading center, small groups, we're just looking at the structure and trying to support in having a safe, orderly environment, and also really making sure that the physical environment is diverse. So posters that they have, is it representative of the students that are in their classroom, focusing on that culturally responsive teaching. The active supervision, like I had said, we're looking for constantly scanning. We know that that's best practice, interacting with our students. We want them to know that we are engaged with them and we're engaging our students at all times, and checking for that appropriate and inappropriate behavior, and being certain that we're using that behavior specific praise or correcting when we need to.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the second section, which is expectations and rules. And that is to teach, monitor, and reinforce expectations and rules that are aligned to the school-wide expectations. So like Shannon said, we know that none of what we're talking about today is going to be new to you as administrators. But what we want is for you to be thinking, okay, these are the key pieces that when you walk into a classroom, you can be looking for. And it really helps also to hone in on what areas a teacher might need additional supports, so that you know what they are and aren't doing, and can align the support you provide to those struggling teachers to their specific needs, rather than just going in and being like, it's chaos in here. You need to be able to figure out exactly where you can help them and support them. So our assumption is that you have school-wide expectations that you teach to your students, and that your teachers know they should be teaching to their students. But that's important in the classroom too, that those classroom expectations are aligned to those school-wide expectations, right? The best practice says 3 to 5 positively stated school-wide expectations. So that's great if we have those, but then if we go into a classroom and they have 8 different expectations that aren't even connected to your school-wide expectations, now suddenly that's 13 or 14 expectations a student is expected to know and remember. And if every one of their teachers has a different set of expectations, how are they supposed to know and remember what the expectations are from class to class? So really having everything aligned to those school-wide expectations is important, so that they're defined, posted. The teacher should be able to just point to the sign to remind the kids of those expectations. So you should see that in the classroom. It should be clear when you walk into the classroom that routines and procedures are taught, the routines and procedures Shannon just talked about. So if a kid has to go sharpen their pencil, every kid is doing it the exact same way, and you can see that that's being done, then you know that routine has been taught and that procedure has been taught. That the expectations are embedded within the academic curriculum and modeled in the classroom. So those pre-corrective moments when a classroom's lining up to the door before they go to recess, the teacher is saying, okay, when we go out in the hallway, we're going to have voice level 0. We're going to walk with our hands behind our backs, so just those reminders that should be clear and obvious to you as an administrator when you walk into the classroom. So here are just some examples of those classroom rules and expectations. You've got on the right your 3 school-wide expectations of safe, responsible, respectful. And then in the classroom, what does being respectful look like? What does responsible look like? And being safe look like? And that can vary from class to class. I taught high school. As a high school English teacher, being safe is going to look very different than the rules for a science class being safe, where it might be about lab equipment and wearing your protective goggles and things like that. That wouldn't even make sense to have that in my English classroom. So, but students know it's all aligned to being safe. In every classroom, I'm going to be safe. That might just look a little bit different. And then here's an example of that matrix that has the classroom rules, and then how that aligns in with the classroom routines and the academic structure of the class. Here's during the welcome time what being safe, respectful, responsible looks like. And then here's the teacher's role or conditions for classroom. Here's what I'm expected to do as a teacher, because teachers need to have their expectations made clear as well.
Okay, now we're going to move into student engagement. So how are we engaging our students in the lesson? And we know, so we've talked about all of these practices, no matter how well a classroom is organized. So they have their expectations, they have their rules. If the engagement piece is not there, then that's when inappropriate behavior often happens. So just looking at engagement and what are different strategies that your teachers are using. So we have opportunities to respond. Those allow for differentiated responses. So that could be individual, maybe working in partners. We're mixing this up throughout a lesson and throughout the day. They could respond verbally, non-verbally, thumbs up, thumbs down, any way to get our students engaged in the learning. And that's going to get our best results and also our best results for behavior, not just academics.
And then, of course, we want to acknowledge appropriate behavior. So it's the use of contextually relevant strategies to acknowledge appropriate behavior. So the reason why we want to do this is it creates a safe, supportive, and positive classroom environment. It increases positive, appropriate behavior. We know that research indicates that when you positively acknowledge a student for doing the right thing, meeting those behavior expectations, they are infinitely more likely to repeat that behavior. And not only that, but when you acknowledge a student for the appropriate behavior, you increase the likelihood of those students around them also mimicking or replicating that behavior as well. So kind of a win-win and a twofer, because you've got both that student that you praise and other students around who are much more likely to engage in that behavior when you've acknowledged it. Plus, let's just be honest, we all like to hear that we're doing a good job. Even as adults, we like that. Yeah, it's great to get a paycheck, and I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't get one. But at the same time, I still like to be told that I'm doing a good job on top of my paycheck. So same thing with students. We want to recognize what they're doing right. And it really does build that positive teacher-student family relationships. If we're not only telling our students that they're doing the right thing, but we call home and let the parents know their kids are doing the right thing, that can really build that positive bank. So when we do have a problem that we need to address with that student and engage the family in, we're not in an adversarial relationship, we're in a positive relationship to start in. So we've got the behavior specific praise where it's a clear thank you for raising your hand. You know, I'm identifying a specific person or the group of students that did something, and I'm naming the behavior that was done. Affective statements comes out of the world of restorative practices. And when it's around those I statements. So it's instead of saying stop interrupting, you never listen to me. An affective statement says, when you interrupt me, I feel frustrated because I would like to be heard too. So it does a couple of things. One is it helps the students understand that their behavior impacts others. They often genuinely don't think that what they do impacts other people. So it helps increase that awareness, which in turn allows them to help take responsibility for their actions. And then second, it also gives them a larger, broader language of emotions. Our children can often say that they're angry, they're mad, they're happy, but that's about it. They're fairly limited in their vocabulary of emotions. So the more we can use some of those nuanced emotion words, we're expanding their vocabulary to help them be able to express themselves better. Basic attention signals, group contingencies, individual reinforcement, group reinforcement, and then a reward system. So just like we want schools to have acknowledgement systems or recognition systems for how are we going to recognize students who are doing the right thing, individual classrooms should as well. We need to make sure they're equitable. We need to make sure that all students are having an opportunity to receive those recognitions. And that might look different for different kids. For one kid, it may not be, okay, you never got a warning the entire week. For one kid, it might be, hey, this week, if by the end of the week, I've only given you 3 warnings, no more than 3 warnings, then you're going to get the reward. Whereas for all the other kids, it's 0 warnings, right? Because We want to make it equitable for each kid.
Okay. And then I'm responding to inappropriate behavior. So looking at this continuum of strategies and how can we respond to the inappropriate behavior and get the results that we want. So like I said, it's using this continuum of contextually relevant strategies to respond to the behavior. So if a misbehavior happens, we want to respond immediately right after the problem occurs in a calm manner. We, of course, do not want to escalate any situation. So just remaining calm and identifying the appropriate behavior. So what should the student be doing at that time? And not just always, doing the negative, looking at what the problem behavior is. So we want to have that 4-to-1 ratio where we're acknowledging our students, 4 positives to 1 corrective, and students with trauma, it's actually 14-to-1. So just really trying to focus on what the students are doing right. We do know that we have to correct misbehaviors, but if we do that, we want to say what the appropriate behavior is as well in a calm manner. Another thing that we can do to respond to inappropriate behavior is allow wait time for our students. I know that, when a situation is escalated, we might want an answer right away, but sometimes we might just have to wait. We might have to walk away, of course, if it's not an unsafe environment, and give student time to calm down and think about, what is going on, and then come back and have that discussion. Sometimes we might have to review or model what the expected behavior is. So like we had talked about earlier, having those classroom expectations tied to the school-wide expectations, going back and modeling, what are we looking for? What does it look like? What does it sound like? Having the student repeat it back to us as we are doing it, maybe even show this is what it looks like, this is what it sounds like. But we want to demonstrate what that desired behavior is, because sometimes they may forget or they really might not know. It just depends on the student. And then once the misbehavior is corrected, we want to acknowledge that student for the appropriate behavior that they're modeling. So using that behavior specific praise to get the behavior that we want modeled in the classroom.
So I want to take a look at each of these resources we've linked to here. But one thing I want to say is that this conversation that we've had, it has come around from a couple of places. One is through our teacher coaching that we've been doing a lot of this year, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then the other is just our recognition that we often have these expectations of teachers, and we get frustrated when teachers are calling the student response team or administration or whatever the system is in your building. They're calling for support to have a student removed from the classroom for things that we consider should be classroom managed behavior, right? And so it can become very frustrating as administrators, like, why are these teachers constantly we're getting calls to security, come remove this kid, and it's for something that the teacher should have dealt with. But then you have to stop and think, do our teachers have the capacity to deal with that? If we're expecting them, if we have this expectation of them that they're to deal with these behaviors in the classroom, then we need to ensure that we're training them and giving the tools they need so that they know how to address those behaviors in the classroom, that they have these tier 1 strategies in place. So a lot of this material came from that conversation and realizing, okay, how are we going to help support teachers on our team as we're supporting teachers across the district in tier 1 behavior strategies? How are we going to ensure that we know when we walk into a classroom, how do we assess it? How do we determine how we're going to spend our time? So again, a few pieces here. We've already shown you this classroom observation tool, and that's a good starting place for where am I going to prioritize how I spend the time I have with this teacher to coach them. And then this is the coaching protocol we developed. Again, as a larger district, we have the luxury of having some people who are able to go in and just do some classroom management coaching with teachers. So we created a protocol this year that we go in and they'll do observations with the teacher. come up with a plan and spend 3 weeks intensively coaching that teacher, where that resource teacher from the district might be in with that teacher for 2 to 3 straight days. Now, as school administrators, you probably aren't going to have that luxury. But again, thinking intentionally about what are you going to work with that teacher on, and what is that going to look like for the time that you have. But we did want to include this just so you were able to see kind of the route that we've taken with that. And then I definitely wanted to show you this because we have some really amazing resources on here. And the main one I think that's relevant to this session is classroom management. This is our department webpage. If you go to classroom management, we have 2 series of videos here. It's an elementary version and a secondary version. These videos were created in conjunction with Dr. Terry Scott of the University of Louisville. And we hired a professional film company to do these videos for us, but they use JCPS teachers and JCPS students in them. And so they're real situations, real scenarios. I mean, they're acting, of course, but they're still real students. And we basically said, okay, what would you do in this situation, to the teacher and the students? And they did an amazing job. But these are videos that are available for anyone to use. You can use them how you'd like in your district, in your school building, as you work with new teachers. I know a lot of schools have new teacher cohorts, and we've seen them use these videos a lot in that, or PLCs will use them. And you can see some of the things, for example, engagement using opportunities to respond. Shannon spent 1 minute on that. And here you have about a 25, 30-minute video that talks and trains on how to use opportunities to respond and what that looks like. Escalating behaviors, using prompts and reminders. So it goes from the very basic building positive relations to effective responses for challenging behaviors. So when you've tried everything you know and the behaviors are still happening, what do you do? I haven't gotten them up on here yet, but we just completed a series of videos also on the MTSS behavior process. And so those will be going up on this website as well. And so again, all of these resources that are on our website are free for you to use, and we would love to have you utilize them as much as you would like. And then the last one is just the Center on PBIS. So this is the National PBIS website. They have all the latest research on behavior, best practice, interventions, all of that. And so I definitely want to support them and promote their work. You can just do a search, and there's probably an article or research on just about anything you can think of. And if you've never made it to the National Leadership Forum, they have it every October in Chicago, and it's really good. And it goes into both tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 strands on really how to have a positive behavior system in your school. So that's it for the presentation. We are welcome to, or happy to stay on for any questions you might have, or just to hear what you're doing in your schools.
Does anyone have any questions? You can unmute and ask, or you can type it in the chat and I can read it for you. We do have a couple of comments thanking you for the wonderful resources. The website for your school district is amazing. I got to see that earlier, and lots and lots of wonderful resources. Okay, if we don't have any questions, I'll go ahead and stop the recording.